Hi you guys, and welcome back to another true crime and makeup time video. I hope you guys are having a great day. I think I'm having an okay day. It's been rough. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I post a new true crime video every single week. And if you guys love true crime and makeup, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. I would love to have you join the fam, and don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video. Also, if you have any case ideas that you would love to share, go ahead and leave it in the comments below and I'll be sure to check it out. Okay, so I switched out my earrings because I feel like I just wasn't doing enough, and like I have my hip hop shirt on, my LA shirt on, so I feel like I need the LA hoops, right? And today's case has nothing to do with hip hop, but this is just the vibe I'm feeling, guys. I was actually driving home yesterday and listening to the whole Tupac album, so I think like in my mind I'm a thug, but really not. So today's case takes place in the small town of Esto, Florida, which apparently only holds less than like 400 people, which I was like, really? And there's really like nothing much to do there. Even the people who live there are kind of like, you'll blink and you'll miss the town. Like there's really not much to do over there. And in this town lived Adrianna Lewis. She was a 27-year-old single mother, and she had two children, a boy and a girl, Adrianna Hutter and AJ Hutter. She had both these kids from two different fathers, so this made them half siblings. And it seems that Hutter was probably Amanda's maiden name. That's why she named both the kids Hutter. So both Adrianna, who was 7, and her brother AJ, who was 6, had the last name Hutter. Hutter. And like I said before, they were both from two separate fathers, but they were only born a year apart. So maybe she was in a relationship and then she had the first child and then she quickly got into another relationship and then had the second child. I don't know. I don't really know how that worked. And there seemed to be nothing indicating that anyone else apart from Amanda, Adrianna, and AJ lived in their family home. So one can only assume that Amanda was probably separated from both the children's fathers. Amanda had a job working at a nursing home, and she worked as a nursing aide, and she would often work pretty late night shifts. And Amanda depicted her daughter, Adrianna, as exceptionally social and active. And AJ, her brother, her younger brother, was the opposite. He was super calm, quiet, and he had like no issue playing by himself. She also states that she had a little bit of trouble bonding with her daughter, her firstborn, and she never really connected with her the same way that she did with her second child, her son, AJ. When Amanda was asked about her relationship with her daughter, Adrianna, she actually admitted that she struggled raising Adrianna. Firstly, she claims that they didn't really get to bond as a normal mother and child would. At the time of Adrianna's birth, Amanda was a member at the National Guard. And when Adrianna turned 6 months old, Amanda was sent to serve a tour, it seems. I wasn't able to find out exactly how long she had been gone for on this tour, but I'm guessing it had to be several months. And for those that don't know, I would say like a baby bonds with their mother like immediately, probably the first few weeks because of breastfeeding, or even not breastfeeding, but just like the care that they receive from their mother or father. But at the time of 6 months, kids start getting like separation anxiety and stuff like that. So if you're gone all the time, most likely they'll forget you, and then, they just don't have that bond with you. You know what I'm saying? Amanda also admitted that Adrianna had been diagnosed with behavioral problems, and she was really difficult to control, I guess. She had been diagnosed with ADHD, and then she also spent some time at a behavioral course. However, I couldn't find any specifics about when this happened or what happened prior or during this time. Some co-workers of Amanda actually claimed that Amanda had come to them once during work, and she said she wanted to kill Adrianna because Adrianna found a permanent black marker and she drew all over Amanda's new car. And Amanda claims that she did say this, but that she was furious, and it's just one of those things that people say when they're angry. Amanda says her life was very calm, it was very quiet, and that she loved her life. She said of her daughter, Adrianna, that she was an attention seeker. She was very hyper, very active, very outgoing. Amanda states, she looked like me, she acted like me, she was headstrong like me. Adrianna was like Amanda's walking shadow. AJ, on the other hand, was the calmer, more quiet child. He was more well-behaved and was easier to sort of discipline. He would just sit in the corner most of the time and just play by himself. He was very content and happy doing this. On 8th August 2007, Amanda said that she finished working a late shift at the nursing home and she returned home and just napped while the kids watch cartoons. The plan for that day was to go shopping for school supplies for the kids, and it was really hot that day. The temperature was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so probably like 38 to 40 degrees Celsius, and that's really hot. That's like peak of summer for me over here. And because it was so hot, the kids kept saying that they wanted to go swimming. And Amanda says she kept telling the kids that it wasn't time to go swimming because they were getting ready to go out to collect their school supplies. So the kids then said that they wanted to go outside and just play for a few minutes while Amanda got like the car ready and got all their stuff ready for them to leave and go outside. Well, go to get the school supplies. So the kids ended up playing in their backyard, and outside in the yard there was a 4-foot deep above ground swimming pool, and without any adult supervision, this pool was off limits to the kids. And the way you enter the pool is by like this little ladder that you pull up to the side of the pool, and then you climb the ladder and get into the pool. But this ladder was always locked inside the shed in the backyard so that the kids couldn't have access to the pool without adult supervision. So Amanda then says that while the kids were playing outside and she was getting everything ready, AJ comes back into the house and says, "Mama, Adrianna's in the pool." And Amanda says that at first she thought he meant that Adrianna was by the pool. So she tells AJ, "Okay, we'll tell her to come back inside. It's time to go." And then she says that AJ goes, "Okay," and then he starts going back to the yard. And as she like looks and follows him on his way out to the yard, she says their lives took a tragic turn. She said AJ was leaning over the pool and like raking his hands in the water like he was trying to grab something. So Amanda runs out of the house, and when she gets to the pool, she sees Adrianna lying face down in the pool, and she was extremely purple and blue in color. Amanda says she immediately began giving Adrianna CPR, and then she called 911. And on the 911 call, she says, "Please send an ambulance. My daughter fell in the pool and she's not breathing." She said her lips are purple. What do I do? Water's coming out of her nose. Please hurry. Adrianna was then airlifted to the nearest hospital, and the emergency room doctor, Linda Fox, says that her and her team were trying to work on Adrianna for over an hour, trying to get her to regain a pulse, but it just didn't last. And at 5:05 p.m., Adrianna was declared dead. And when a doctor told Amanda that her daughter had passed, Amanda says she was sick to her stomach. She kissed Adrianna, she hugged her, and she touched her because she says that she knew that this would be the last time that she would ever be able to do so. She said she knew right in that moment that her daughter was just gone, and she wishes that she could trade places with her. So after this, the authorities believed that Adrianna's death was accidental. The fire chief, who was the first on scene at the time, believed that Adrianna went over the side of the pool, she fell in, she hit her head, and she drowned. An officer on the scene stated that there were no indications of foul play. It just seemed like, a child was playing near the water, and these accidents do happen, and that's what happened with Adrianna. You know, we all know that pools and bodies of water with little children are always a hazard. Majority of these drownings are never intentional and not even due to true neglect by a parent or a carer. While many people, do argue you should never ever take your eyes off a child at all, especially when there are dangers present, things can happen so quickly and, accidents really do happen, unfortunately. So while Adrianna was being treated at the hospital when the doctors were trying to save her life, Amanda's stepfather, Chuck Burns, would arrive at their home and take care of AJ. So he took AJ with him back to his home while Amanda went with Adrianna to the hospital. Within hours of this happening, the police would soon receive news that would completely shatter their theories of what happened to Adrianna that day. The sole eyewitness, AJ, the brother of Adrianna, had a completely different story. Chuck, Amanda's stepfather, would go to the police with a completely different version of what had happened that day. Chuck would claim that AJ, the brother, stated that Amanda held Adrianna down under the water in the pool and drowned her own daughter. AJ first spoke to the police when he was first interviewed, and then later on he was interviewed again by a detective that specialized in speaking with children. AJ would say that Mama dunked my sister. AJ would claim that Amanda got angry with Adrianna for taking glass cleaner spray and spraying it all over the TV. He said that Adrianna had done some stuff that she wasn't supposed to do, so Mama got mad and threw her in the pool. He would claim that Amanda repeatedly dunked his sister into the pool. Side note, oh my god, do you know what my eyes look like right now? Do you guys remember Beyonce in the Crazy in Love music video? And then she's wearing like this purple and orange outfit. Like, don't my eyes look like that? You know what I mean? Do you guys remember? No? But AJ's accounts would get confusing at times because he would change it up a little bit. First, he claimed that when his mother got mad at Adrianna, she sent Adrianna to like the local park, and then she followed Adrianna in her car to the park, and then she would dunk her in the pool before and after the trip to the park. And then another point, he claimed he hadn't actually even seen his mom dunking Adrianna into the pool. And I mean, he's just only a little kid dealing with such a huge, horrific issue. Like, it's understandable that he didn't have like the most perfect version and like a perfect script of what happened that day. Despite the holes in AJ's story, the police decided to go ahead and believe him. So they ended up launching an investigation into Amanda's life. And upon doing so, they noticed a pretty troubled relationship between Amanda and her daughter, Adrianna. Adrianna was a habitual bedwetter, and she was actually diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder, and hyperactivity disorder, and she spent around a week in a behavioral hospital/center. And Amanda would admit that it was a daily struggle raising Adrianna. Amanda also let the police know that when Adrianna was 6 months old, she ended up leaving her to go work in the National Guard. So she felt that that bond that you normally or naturally, hopefully, develop with your child was just taken away from her. But despite all of this, Amanda claims that her affection for Adrianna would develop over time. Amanda claims she wanted to protect Adrianna and prevent her from anything bad happening to her. But after this, the police ended up conducting a search of Amanda's home, and even more alarm bells were raised because their home smelled of urine. The kids' bedrooms were like so bare. They barely had any toys in them, if any. I don't think they had any toys. And Amanda's excuse was that she had taken away the children's toys from the whole home, I guess, because she wanted to discipline them for not cleaning up. She said they would probably have gotten everything back, like all the toys back, within around a week of the punishment. And she told the police that in the meanwhile, she had taken the toys and stored them in the shed in the yard. But when police went to the shed and took photos of the shed, there were no toys in the shed. There were a few pool floaties, but apart from that, there was no toys. But in that shed, they also saw the ladder to that pool that was definitely in the shed. And that's where she claimed the ladder was always kept to prevent the kids from entering the pool without adult supervision. Amanda's behavior at the hospital too was another red flag for the police. When the ER doctors described to Amanda Adrianna's condition at the time she was being treated, her response was to ask the doctor where the vending machines were. Again, if you guys remember my video about Debbie Downs, is that what her name was? Debbie Downs. She also reacted in this kind of strange way when the severe condition of her kids was advised to her by the doctors. And again, we all react differently, but like me as a mom, I'm telling you I wouldn't react that way. And when the doctor told Amanda that Adrianna had passed, she didn't see any tears. She didn't see any emotion. And she was kind of like, you know, you tell a mother that their 7-year-old daughter has passed away and you expect some type of reaction. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, for sure, I would not react that way. Like, I would be hysterical. Like, I'm not even wishing that on my life. Go away. Family members of Amanda would say that her reaction to what happened to her daughter was normal. Like, that's just Amanda being super like reserved, and that's like a steely personality. And her lawyer claims that the reaction that everyone should be looking at is actually Amanda's reaction during the 911 call. She was hysterical. She threw up. And he claims, how can someone turn a switch like that? That Amanda would have to be an actress on the level of Meryl Streep to be able to, you know, pull something like that off. The police then ended up giving Amanda a lie detector test, which she did pass, but police were still convinced that Amanda did drown Adrianna. And Amanda's lawyer claims that the police had already concluded that Amanda was guilty without having sufficient evidence, without having any proof. He stated that the police believed that they had an eyewitness who saw his mother drowning his sister. And her lawyer states that you can just get a 6-year-old to agree with just about anything. Dr. Stephen, who was an expert in child testimony, reviewed AJ's case as a segment for 2020 and described the police interview of AJ as highly insufficient. He said extra care is required to interview kids, and especially children like AJ, who he believed was developmentally delayed. Dr. Stephen described the behavior of AJ as a typical 4-year-old boy when AJ was 6 years old at the time. And for those that don't know, when you have kids, like, you would think that 4 and 6 is not that big of a deal. Like, okay, so he acts like a 4-year-old, he's only 6, but in terms of children, like, that kind of like assesses their maturity level or their age, essentially their brain age. So it kind of is a huge deal that he was acting like a 4-year-old and he was 6 in terms of his testimony. Dr. Stephen had conducted various experiments with children to prove that children could be manipulated into giving accounts or agreeing with statements that were completely untrue or outrageously untrue statements. In one test, the children were told that there was a rabbit at the school. And despite no child ever seeing a rabbit, they were like, yeah, there's a rabbit at the school. Like, I'm telling you, there's a rabbit at the school. Like, they completely believed the statements that were told by others to them. So are their accounts reliable? Dr. Stephen also had children recount accounts of going up into the Eiffel Tower and releasing balloons at the top of the Eiffel Tower, even though none of this stuff ever happened. So basically, Dr. Stephen's whole job was to just debunk, I guess, AJ's testimony and accounts of what happened that day. However, Dr. Stevens said that when AJ later recounted the events of that day to a trained interviewer, an interviewer who was trained to speak with children, that AJ couldn't have fabricated such a detailed, gruesome story without the help of an adult if he weren't telling the truth. An adult would have had to coach AJ after the drowning and before he met with the police. Some of Amanda's family members and Amanda herself are convinced that that's exactly what happened. Their suspicion centers on Chuck Burns, Amanda's stepfather and AJ's step-grandfather, because remember, he was the one that took AJ with him when Amanda and Adrianna had gone to the hospital for Adrianna to be treated. And he was the one that brought AJ back to the police station with all these claims. Chuck arrived to the scene about 30 minutes after Adrianna had drowned, and AJ, who called Chuck Pa Chuck, made a beeline towards Chuck, and they claim that Chuck spent about 15 minutes alone in the car with AJ when he was driving him to his house. Amanda's mother, Brenda Burns, who was actually married to Chuck at the time this took place, claims that she has no doubts that Chuck could have coached AJ into accusing Amanda of drowning Adrianna, and they are now divorced. Brenda and Chuck are now divorced. Brenda claims that Chuck was just never really fond of Amanda and that she just wouldn't be surprised if this did happen. Chuck, however, claims that he never coached AJ, and although he agreed that he never liked Amanda, he said that he just wouldn't do something like that. And he didn't like Amanda because he claimed that he just didn't like the way that she treated her children and raised her children. Chuck claimed that Amanda was just not a good mother. He claimed that the children went hungry a lot, and sometimes it would be evening time and the kids had barely had anything to eat. In that town of Esto, it wasn't just Chuck who had doubts about Amanda's parenting. There had been talks about Amanda's parenting as well as rumors of a suspicious past that Amanda had had. And then it was during this time that Amanda's past was uncovered, and it was found that as a teenager, Amanda actually got pregnant and gave birth to a baby boy named Alex. And Brenda claimed that Amanda was young, but she was a loving, good mother. Then, when Alex was 16 months old, he suddenly stopped breathing. Amanda claims that she had left the room while Alex was napping, and when she came back, she just found him unresponsive and that he wasn't breathing. The autopsy results indicated that the baby, Alex, he died unexpectedly because of a seizure disorder. But now, Amanda, having lost a second child due to, an accident, it was just really suspicious and people just didn't trust her. Now, SIDS is something real, sudden infant death syndrome, I believe, and it's most common below the age of 6 months. Like, that's when you really need to conduct safe sleep practices with infants. But after 12 months old, SIDS is really, really rare. But the autopsy results stated that, Alex died of a seizure disorder. For the prosecutor, Larry Basford, it was just one more red flag against Amanda, and he believes it was something relevant to look at when you're looking at all the facts of this case. So after gathering all this information, Amanda was then arrested and charged with first-degree murder and was facing life in prison without parole. Through her lawyer, she actually rejected a guilty plea deal for a 10-year sentence. She said she didn't want to take that plea because she's not going to admit to something that she didn't do. In February of 2008, Amanda's trial began, and the prosecution's star witness was AJ. And again, this is like the Diane Downs case where her daughter ended up testifying against her. And Amanda claims it was super hard watching AJ walk into the courtroom. She couldn't hug him. She couldn't give him a kiss. She knew that nobody would let her talk to him. So that was like her baby, and she found that really difficult to deal with. The testimony of AJ began with a bang because when AJ went up to testify and when he was asked where his mother was sitting, he didn't even recognize his mother. He couldn't point her out in the crowd. And she was sitting directly in front of him. At first, he told Amanda's lawyer, the defense attorney, that his mother was not in the courtroom and that she was in jail. And then later, the prosecution ended up pointing Amanda out to AJ, and then he just broke down crying. The prosecutor states that it was a super emotional moment, even for him, and he had to control himself. Once AJ sort of, regained his composure, he ended up pointing out his mother in the courtroom. And then he ended up showing this drawing that he drew of the crime scene and what took place that day. And it depicted his mother killing his sister. But like in his police interview, AJ actually ended up giving conflicting and confusing sort of statements. He couldn't pin down exactly where he was during the incident taking place. And at one time, he even said that Adrianna drowned outside the pool. Later on, he said he didn't know how Adrianna drowned. And then later he said Adrianna had slipped and fell into the pool and that she was cleaning bugs at the time, and that's probably how she was reaching in and she slipped and fell in. Like, this poor kid, he must have had so much pressure on him at the time. Amanda's lawyer even claims that AJ was clearly an incompetent witness. Every time AJ was asked, what happened on the day, he would give a different answer every single time. For the defense's part, they would go back to the initial story that Amanda had given the police and that she had stuck to the entire time. Her claim was that she had planned to take the children out shopping for school supplies, and she had allowed them to go outside and just play while she got everything ready. And then she states that when AJ came back inside and said Adrianna's in the pool, she thought he meant by the pool, and then she told AJ to tell Adrianna to come back inside the house. As he went outside to tell Adrianna that, she looks outside the window and then she sees him raking Adrianna out of the pool. She claims that's when she ran outside and tried to conduct CPR and save Adrianna. But obviously, while she was trying to prove her innocence, the defense had to prove that AJ's testimony was invalid. It was wrong. They would show evidence that AJ was developmentally delayed and that he would easily get confused as per Dr. Stevens' experiments, and that he was just relaying information that didn't even exist. They wanted the jury to see that AJ didn't have his facts straight and that he would change his story all the time. Also, the pool was between 32 to 35 inches tall, and Adrianna was 47 inches tall. So, on the one-off chance that she was able to climb up without a ladder and fall into the pool, all she needed to do to save herself was just stand up. And the prosecutor said that AJ made 27 statements about what happened that day that were apparently confirmed, which I didn't really understand. I didn't understand what that meant, because what's confirmed? What statements are confirmed? But they never explained that. And he also said that AJ wasn't the only witness to cast doubt on Amanda as a parent. Witnesses claimed that Adrianna had an intense fear of the water, leading the prosecutor to question why would she even go to the pool by herself. Even more damaging was Amanda's co-worker's testimony about how Amanda stated that she wanted to kill Adrianna for drawing on her new car with a permanent marker. And apparently Adrianna had written "loser" on the side of her mom's car, which, that tells you about their relationship. That's weird. Amanda testified that that's a comment that people use all the time without even meaning what it implies. Like, how many times do we say, oh, I'm going to kill them, or I'm going to kill you for doing that? Like, it's just a common sort of phrase that we use. And she said never in a million years would she ever do anything to her children, and that's not what she meant about it at all. But saying that, my son, he's over 2 years old now, and he's never really done anything, I guess, at this age to really piss me off. But I couldn't imagine saying that about him. Like, I don't know, whoever's parents, do you guys say that about your kids? Like, is that a common thing that you would say when your kids annoy the shit out of you, like, as they get older? I just can't imagine using those words to describe, like, how mad I would be. But I don't know. If you disagree, leave it in the comments below. But most damaging, and what I believe kind of determines Amanda's innocence or not, was the fact that Adrianna's head was found with bruising all over her forehead. The prosecutors claimed that this totally corroborates AJ's story about Amanda holding Adrianna's head under the water and drowning her. In the end, the jury did not believe the defense's version of events, and after a 4-day trial and 2 hours of deliberation, they convicted Amanda on the charges of first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. Amanda was sentenced to life imprisonment for the first-degree murder charge and then 30 years for the aggravated child abuse charge. Like, dang, she could have only gotten 10 years if she took the plea deal. And like, I'm not saying that that's what she should have done, but it's like crazy how one decision can impact your whole life. Like, now she's in prison for the rest of her life. She would have gotten out before the age of 40 if she took the plea deal. This one is so hard, and I don't know if Amanda is guilty or not. I don't even know if there was definitive proof apart from the fact that Adrianna did have bruises on her forehead. And I mean, I guess that's how forensic evidence and things like that play out, right? Like, why would she have these bruises on her forehead, you know? The pool itself was like 4 feet above ground. And the pool material from the photos looked like this soft, like blow-up kind of type. I don't think it was a blow-up pool, but it looked kind of like that. And the ladder to the pool was found in the shed. So there was no evidence as well to show that it had initially been left out and then maybe Amanda put it back in. It was just in the shed. So how could Adrianna get in herself? Like, I feel like the sides would have been too slippery or too like awkward to climb. Like I wouldn't say there's no way that it could have happened, but I just find it would be kind of difficult to get in. But I feel like if Amanda wanted to make it look like Adrianna got in herself and drowned, like, she should have probably put the pool ladder at the pool by the time the police came to show that that's how she got in. I mean, I'm just giving all criminal tips, but don't listen to me. But I'm just saying, like, if she wasn't innocent and she was like, oh, I've killed my daughter, I need to make it look like an accident, she could have easily just taken that pool ladder and put it by the pool. And then I feel like there probably wouldn't have been as much debate on what happened, because then it's just like, well, she crawled up that pool ladder, you know, silly me, I left it out and she got in the pool. But the fact that she was just like arguing and saying like, no, she got in the pool by herself, like maybe she is innocent. I don't know, guys. I also agree that there was enough evidence that Adrianna was a difficult child for Amanda to raise. And if we were to believe AJ's statement about Amanda losing her shit on Adrianna for spraying glass cleaner on the TV, perhaps it would implicate Amanda a little bit more to say that she was guilty and just lost her temper. However, I do not believe in any way that AJ was mature enough to be giving a testimony, but then the police had to rely on that to convict Amanda. And even though he wasn't consistent in his versions, it also doesn't mean that what he was saying wasn't true, but I just don't believe that he was mature enough and he needed to be put through that. Obviously, Amanda was not, a perfect mother. I feel like none of us are. She did say and do things that were not interpreted in the best light. But I mean, how many times do we say things in our daily life that can be taken completely the wrong way? I know I definitely do. No evidence of any involvement with Child Protective Services was ever found in regards to Amanda and her children. Adrianna, was attending school. She had been to behavioral hospitals. She was on medication. So she was around doctors and nurses a lot. So if they ever saw anything that indicated child abuse, I'm sure, hopefully, they would have raised some red flags. But then why would Chuck, the stepfather, claim that Amanda never, fed her children? And then also the fact that there were no toys found in the home, and as well as like the house smelled like pee and like it was barren. Like, what's going on? Are kids just peeing everywhere? But then it was claimed that Adrianna was still wetting the bed. But I mean, just because a child wets the bed, the whole house doesn't smell like pee, does it? Like, unless she's wetting the bed everywhere. She's wetting the couch, she's wetting the floor. Like, you're not cleaning up after your daughter. Where are their books, their toys? Is that itself a form of neglect? Sorry, I have so many questions about this case. I just find it like, it's kind of crazy. So Amanda Lewis was given a life sentence in prison based on the word of a 7-year-old child who could not only tell the same story twice, but did not even recognize his own mother that was sitting right in front of him in the courtroom, but he also hadn't seen her in 6 months. I really don't know what to think, guys. I feel like this case is It's just crazy. I feel like anytime a mother harms their child, and it's just so hard to prove, you know, but in this case, it was just the three of them. I don't know what to think, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this case down below in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you guys enjoy my wild vibe. I really like how the look turned out. What do you guys think? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate you all so much. And I will see you in the next video. Besitos. Mwah. Bye.